Thank you so much for watching Riff TV. Now, this interview is obviously with video, but I don't interview everybody on Zoom. That's why I put it on my Talkin' Rock with Meltdown podcast. We talk to rock artists from all over the genre. So check out Talkin' Rock with Meltdown wherever you get your podcasts. And now to today's video interview. Trevor, an honor and a privilege to talk to you. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So the new record drops on October 6th, actually a month from today as we record this. It's called Rio. Just real fast, sum up the album for us. What is this all about?
You know, in a nutshell, I had not done a rock record with vocals for so long. Basically, my last album was outside of band stuff. The last album was 89. And the weird thing is it doesn't feel like that long ago because I got into doing orchestral, film scores. And I started thinking I'll do a couple of film scores and then get back into it. But here I am many, many years later with having done 50 films. And it was like, Jesus, I haven't done a record for so long. I must get into it. Luckily, I went on the road with Rick Wakeman and John quite recently. I mean, with both Rick and I had a thing after we toured together years ago. So we've got to have a bucket list. We've got to do this again. And we're dear friends. So we did this tour, which was also going to be a couple of shows and just have that to remember it by. It landed up over 200 odd shows. So my hands were really back in shape as far as playing, and my voice was back in shape. The muscle was really being worked, and so it was like a perfect storm. And I had a movie I was finishing, and some Jerry Bruckheimer, what was a National Treasure. I did the movies, and then there was the TV series. So I did that. And then I thought, okay, I'm not doing another thing until I get into the album, because I'd been writing stuff, but never finishing it. So I just thought, okay, I'm not doing another thing. And the one thing that happened from film is discipline, because if you're doing film school, you can't say, oh, I'm going to take a couple of days off. It's not coming to me. They'll say, oh, we'll get somebody else. So the discipline, I think, helped. And it had been so long doing it that I felt so completely fresh to do it. Felt almost like it was my first album. So it was really enjoyable. And the drummer on one of the tracks, I think one of the greatest drummers ever, Vinny Colaiuta, said to me, and it's just in passing, the minute you think about playing, you stop playing. And I didn't quite get what he was saying. And then I got it. It's like, if you just do, you can really get going. But if you start thinking about it, and, oh, I don't know about that note I played 4 bars ago. And it's even reading music. You can't ponder on the last bar if you've done it wrong. You've got to just carry on. So I think that also hit in. Just do this, and I just worked really, really flat out and never stopped until the album was done. And it was probably, I mean, everyone, I'm sure, when you're speaking to people, say, oh, this is my best album, this is my. So I know that. What I will say is it feels as fresh as anything I've ever done, and I enjoyed it certainly a lot.
And of course, the record's named Rio after your granddaughter. The album cover, you painted that, correct?
Yeah. It somehow art came up, and I was speaking to Thomas, head of the record company, and he was saying, "Yeah, I've got to start thinking of artwork, and or album cover." And then I think he brought up something about, and I said, "Yeah, I dabble in oils and acrylics and digital art, my new thing." And he said, "Oh, send me some stuff." And it was kind of simple as that. The only condition, I said, is if you land up in a week where you think, oh no, this is a terrible idea, I don't like it, we mustn't use it, you're totally free to fire the artist. Other than that, I said, Absolutely, whatever you want.
So you dropped the first single a few weeks back, a Big Mistake. The new single is called Push. Both these songs, for any prog rock fan, especially any Yes fan, this is right in the wheelhouse. What does the rest of the record sound like?
Um, it's pretty diverse. I mean, there are tracks which are. I mean, there's like a country track with picking chicken guitar, but it still sounds like something from a record I would make. So I think while demographically it visits a lot of different areas, I think it's pretty coherent and cohesive in stylistically of a record that I've penned, if you like.
Yeah, I saw that you were think. Well, you should have named it Demographic Nightmare. I saw that in your
Yeah,
one.
yeah, exactly.
So what is harder? Is recording a record harder? Is doing the music for a movie, a score harder?
I think doing a record is kind of harder because you're thinking of the whole package. With a film, you've got the script, you've got everything. What's harder about a film is you working. Um, well, first of all, you've got to write the themes, and the people have to like the themes, and then those themes have to be attached to different things, different people, and different characters, and even there's a theme for you might write a particular theme for a chase scene or whatever the case may be, and then attach those within a kind of a 30th of a second. You're writing to frames. Like the director might say to you, "Oh, on the third reel when Nicolas Cage opens his eye, I'd like the cue to start as the eye opens." So there's like 6 frames of when it opens, and which frame would you like? And so you go through that. So that you don't have to worry about with a record, but the inspiration is no less making a record, and obviously the added bonus is you've got stories to tell because the film isn't telling them, and you have to come up with those stories and the lyrics, and then sing the damn stuff.
That's right. Yeah, and you do a lot of that. So as far as your movies are concerned, what's your favorite movie that you scored?
I think, and it's maybe not the most dynamic and not the biggest. I think the biggest film I did was either Armageddon or National Treasure or Bad Boys 2. One of those three was the biggest commercially, but the film I'm proudest, there are two that I'm really proud of. One didn't do commercially very well. It's yeah, oh God, what was it called now? It's the Philippines War. Oh God, the Death March, and oh my goodness, I can't believe it. But it doesn't matter. The main, I think my most enjoyable and proud I am of a score was Remember the Titans.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure, yeah. That's amazing. That's really cool stuff. And because you're scoring all these movies and stuff, it probably gives you a little bit of latitude to kind of do your own thing when you want to, correct?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it led to me waiting 34 years, but I'm not waiting again on that. When I finished this album, something weird happened to me. It's almost like a drug addiction. It's like I got to do this again right now. Is there an antidote? So, because I wasn't finished. I mean, I finished the album, handed it in, and everything was It's funny because my a guy who assists me on the he mastered the album is a great guy, Paul Linford. He said to me because I said to him, "Shit, there's the ride cymbal and the chorus of Toxic. It's not loud enough. It should be louder." And he listened to it, and then he called me up and he said, "You've just finished mastering the record. It's done. Let it go." And he was right, and I did let it go, and I'm really happy with it. Although the weird thing is, I can't hear a record once I've handed it in. I don't really hear it for a couple of months until it's fresh again. I still listen to it because I want to, there might be things I need to do and videos to make, but it's a peculiar thing. I don't hear it for a while, and what I do have though is I got like cash in my pocket. I want to spend it, and that cash is more material. So I want to do another one.
Yeah, there you go. I don't get a chance to talk to many
musicians from your neck of the woods down in southern Africa, but there is a band called Seether that we play. That those guys they came up in the late '90s, early 2000s. How does a guy like you discover music back in the day, and what was your childhood like as far as discovering music and playing music?
Well, I just wrote down Seether because I want to check that out. I'd never heard of it.
Oh, okay.
No, that's great. You know, a lot of the music that during the apartheid era was a lot of the music we would get and listen to, other than the radio and local stuff, because there was sanctions and things. Some things weren't allowed, but a lot of British rock. So we got very, very little American rock, and the influences on a lot of musicians, like 13, 14-year-old musicians would be, Led Zeppelin, Cream, Hendrix, just, I guess, the normal thing that you would expect anywhere. But bands like Kiss and stuff, just, you never heard of them in South Africa. But definitely the British rock invasion, if you like, and obviously the Beatles and Dave Clark Five and stuff like that. I loved the Dave Clark Five and Jerry and the Pacemakers, but essentially the Beatles and then the rock stuff. The only American rock band which I loved and we used to do when I was like a teenager, but we used to do cover versions of was I've got what's the band's name? Mark Farner.
Oh yeah, Grand from right
Grand
here.
Funk Railroad. Yeah, we used to play like a 25-minute version of Inside Looking Out because I loved Mark Farner's voice. I thought he was such a great singer.
Yeah, because those guys would tell me that they would trade tapes and CDs and the whole thing like that. But I always thought that was interesting because nowadays in 2023 the world's a lot smaller, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean it's impossible to keep up with everything that's happening. I mean, one benefit to me is my son's a record producer, and he was in a band. I don't know if you've heard of Group Love.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and and he was the producer of the record and co-writer of the songs and drummer. And he did such a phenomenal job producing the first three albums. And then he decided, I want to be a producer. And he's been producing ever since. And Keith Urban is one he produced. BB Rexha was another one, and just tons of artists. He left a half an hour ago to go to the studio. So, but he keeps me in touch with a lot of the stuff, and I keep him in touch with a lot of things he hasn't heard. Like today, the last night, I said to him, I don't know what came. We were watching the tennis, and he said he was talking about something, and I said, "Have you ever heard Weather Report?" And he said, "Who?" I said, "Weather Report." And he said, "No." I said, "Probably the greatest bass player ever, Jaco Pastorius."
Yeah.
And then I played in Birdland, and he was like, "Wow, what is this?" So now it's in his car. He's listening to what's it called, Bad Weather, or whatever the album was called.
Yeah, Jaco. During the pandemic, I watched a documentary about him. He was unreal.
Man, everyone talks about Hendrix of being the unique thing. I think Jaco was an equal, at least, to Hendrix as far as. Listen, and musically, he's way advanced of just about anyone, including Hendrix. But he was just so phenomenal, Jaco.
But what about
just phenomenal.
Squire?
Oh, and Chris, I got to say, I played with a lot of people. And listen, on my third solo album, Jack Bruce was the bass player. I've had, I haven't had slouches playing behind me, and having Chris Squire playing bass behind you is like having a bulldozer. You can't relax. How I met Chris was I was writing an album, which basically was the material on 90125. And I'd finished, Owner of a Lonely Heart, Changes, a bunch of the tracks on there. And I was on a development deal with Geffen Records. And cut a long story short, 6 months in, I get a call, and I think they're saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to have lunch next week. Can you come?" But it wasn't. It was them saying, "Hi, it's so-and-so from Geffen. I just want to let you know you've dropped," and the phone went down. It was pretty boom. And it's like, Okay, well, I've just spent all the money I made from producing Manfred Mann years ago to build a studio. I've got a mortgage. So what do I do now? And Mutt Lang, who's a good friend of mine and producer, said to me, Foreigner are looking for a keyboard player. And I thought, I got to do something. So I flew and I rehearsed with Foreigner for a while. And Mick Jones called me. He said, look, if you want this, let me know. But I've just listened to your album and you should be playing guitar and you ain't doing it in my band, which was the sweetest compliment, you know. And he's been a friend ever since. But I didn't do that, and then I sent tapes out trying to get a record deal, and I only had two offers. One was from RCA and a guy called Ron Fair who thought "Owner of a Lonely Heart" was a smash. He's the first person who said to me that's a smash song. And one other company was interested, but I had a lot of rejects. I got I got a letter from Clive Davis, you know, long before emails and stuff. Got a letter from Clive Davis saying, while we feel your voice has top 40 appeal, we feel the song "Owner of a Lonely Heart" is far too left field for the marketplace today. So 3 years later, I took a Polaroid and sent a picture of the billboard to Clive. Not that he has to worry; he's had pretty good success.
Had a pretty good track record, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But yeah, and the other thing is Phil Carson, who was a great record guy from Atlantic, said to me, "Look, I've just listened to your stuff. I think what might work great for you is to put a band together with this material and with you as the singer, and just do this with Chris Squire and Alan White." And I said, "Well, I don't know them." He said, "Well, let me go to London. I'll send you to London, meet up with them." And Chris got the tape and he said, "Oh, yeah, I'd like to meet this guy." And it was very kind. And of course, Chris turned up at the meeting late, which he never, ever did. I mean, I suggested on his tombstone, they say the late Chris Squire, you know. But he became seriously, and I know we all say he's like a brother to me. Chris was literally like a brother to me. He became a real confidant and such a close friend. And on stage, he was even closer. We had such a rapport on stage, and I miss him. You know, he was a tremendous guy to play with, and there were a couple of times during the '90s where he said to me, "Come back to the band." But at that point, I was so involved in film scoring that you know, I think my agents might have put a hit on me, you know, so it wasn't going to happen. But yeah, the devastating when Chris passed away, one of the greatest ever, you know. And
now, Yes was such a good band, obviously in the '70s, but in the '80s, it just cranked up the machine. It was like you guys were all over the radio. I mean, just hit after hit after hit is unbelievable.
you know, Chris was he had such a dry, cynical sense of humor, but in the sweetest way. And I'll never forget when Owner hit number one. Chris came up to me. He'd had a couple of drinks, and I had, and he said to me, he shook my hand. I said, "What's that for?" And he said, I wanted to thank you for revitalizing the entire back catalogue of Yes." I said, "You bastard." I said, "Do I get any?" And he said, "No."
Hey, a couple more things here for you, and we'll cut you loose. I really appreciate the time. What is it like for a kid from South Africa to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
If I'm not mistaken, it's the first time ever. And it was my manager had said to me, "You should really mention that." And I just forgot to mention it, you know, when I was saying thank you. But it was hard to think of too much because Rick's speech was so incredibly funny, you know, it kind of took all of us by surprise. But yeah, it's amazing. I mean, what an honor. It was just an amazing honor. Although it was so long, it was like, oh God, when does this end? But thank you so much. You know?
Yeah, that's unreal. By the way, I see you wearing a Titleist hat every now and then. Are you a golf fan?
My brother is.
Oh, okay.
And that's his hat. He gave that to me.
Oh.
But I mean, all my friends are avid golfers. And if we go for dinner with the wrong friends, I got nothing to say because I'm sitting there listening to, yeah, we should have used I was supposed to use a wood on that, and it's like wood means different things to me.
All right, the first single you released off the record is called Big Mistake. So I'll ask you, final question. What was your
Yes.
biggest mistake?
My biggest mistake. God, what was the biggest mistake? I think my biggest mistake was waiting too long to move out of South Africa, because I was urging to get out and play in England and then in America, and but I still had fun in South Africa with the band, but the politics were just really a little bit unacceptable, to say the least.
Well, Rio comes out on October 6th. Trevor, once again, it's an honor to talk to you. Big fan, and I can hardly wait to check out the rest of this. Like I said, Big Mistake and Pusher out right now, and October 6th, the rest of the album drops. So, Trevor, good luck with everything, and we appreciate talking to us.
All right, man. Great talking to you. We'll do it again, I hope.